It's my great pleasure to welcome you all here today for our next presentation of Our People, Their Stories, Oral Histories of Northern Tasmania with our guest speaker, Dr. Gary Fettke. To begin with, I'd like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the Tasmanian Aboriginal people as the traditional owners and custodians of our island of Lutruwita, Tasmania. In particular, I'd like to acknowledge the people of the Stony Creek Nation, who are the custodians of this land on which we meet today, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, who over generations have lived and cared for this land and who continue to strive to maintain and share their culture. Just so that everyone knows, this event is being filmed today. If you are uncomfortable with being filmed, we'd ask that you'd sit on the far side of the auditorium. It's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Gary Fettke. Dr. Fettke has practiced as an orthopaedic surgeon in Launceston for over 30 years. In that time, he has become concerned about the overall declining state of people's health. This has resulted in him developing the belief that our modern lifestyles and diets are leading to increased ill health in the population. He is concerned about what this means for us as individuals and for the health system as we move forward, and what could be done to improve our own health and the health of the system that serves us. I'm looking forward to listening to Dr. Fettke telling us about his journey from his beginnings and how that has led him to now and what comes next. Will you please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Fettke to tell his story.
Good morning. Thank you, Edwina. I think it's a real concern for you all that Vicky Dewsbury is not here today. Yes. So maybe she knows something that you don't. And I've already got my other side of speaking here. Belinda is telling me what I'm supposed to do. Apart from acknowledging our country, our people, I need to acknowledge three people who are here today. And one is my wife, who is here out of duty, my mother-in-law, Rosemary, and one of my surrogate mothers. Am I allowed to say? Margaret Tonne. And I had, I'll touch on that because I had three surrogate mothers after my mother died. And so I understand why they're here, and I have no idea why the rest of you are. I don't know if there's free food. I haven't checked, but no free food. The weather's actually pretty good outside, and I have no idea. I have some good news for you, that out of every lecture, every speech, every talk that you may or may not go to, your recollection of what's said is actually minimal. There'll only be maybe one, two, maybe, if you're lucky or unlucky, 3 points that you'll remember from this talk. So the vast majority of what I say, I will get away with. I had dinner with some friends last week, and they gave me memories of or what they remembered from a recent talk, and despite them sitting together, they have disparate memories of actually what was said. So don't worry, I understand that you are going to forget most of this talk. But it is a buffet. This is a meat buffet because you're not going to find a lot of vegetables there. And you can, like a buffet, you can pick and choose what you wish to take away from the buffet. If you're vegan, you're not going to find much. So let's proceed on with... Well, I'm going to have to do a life history. A life history is actually your life, isn't it? And I'm not dead yet. However, in some respects, I approach this as my own eulogy, which I actually found quite confronting. I've done a lot of public speaking all around the world, do a lot of podcasting, and I rarely touch upon the topic of me. Most of you will know that I openly admit to not knowing everything, but I do have an opinion about it. And so to actually talk about myself is actually quite challenging, and so I'll hang in there for you. Everyone has an aim in life, and you can sort of say, I want to leave the world a better place, but my aim is to actually hopefully leave and have a net positive effect. We can measure all of that in a variety of different ways, but I'd like to think that at the end of my time I'll have had a net positive effect. Whether or not that's on the environment, with tree planting, whether or not it's on people's minds or on their bodies or on society. I don't know if I'm going to get there, but that's my aim. I quite like history, and I am struck with Cassandra's curse. This is a picture of Cassandra. She was the sister of Paris, who had the affair with Helen of Troy, Trojan horse, all of that story, the war that went on for decades, fall of a major empire in that time. And Apollo, the god, wanted to favour her. And he favoured her to try and get her affections and by giving her the ability to see into the future. She did not receive his affections, and so he cursed her with the ability to see into the future, tell people about it, but nobody would believe her. Welcome to my life. I do have one man's answer for world peace and global health. I wrote this book 14 years ago. I still think most of it stands. I had to write a lot of it to get it off my chest. And there's the book opening, and Steve Biddulph kindly wrote the foreword for it, spoke at the book opening. And just to let you know that Vicky Dewsbury is here, and she's cowering on just to the right of that yellow piece there. And so I actually spoke to her this morning and said, bad luck, you are here today. I believe in this. The most dangerous phrase in the English language is we've always done it this way. If any of you receive an email from me, you will find at the bottom of the email, science evolves by being challenged, not by being followed. That's evolution. Evolution has constantly challenged. The moment you accept the paradigm for what it is, that is the end of progress on every single capacity that you can possibly think of. And so I have constantly challenged, not always to my best interests. Now, if you're going to marry someone, it's really important to give them pre-warning. And I found this card. We've got it somewhere and stored away. But on the front of the card it said, it's just you and me against the rest of the world. And when you opened it up it said, I think we'll need to take them by surprise. And Belinda still married me. But if you're going to do all of that, it is tiring. So anybody who thinks I have infinite reserves and capacity, no, I don't. I don't know who you think I am. And I wear many cloaks or disguises. I am an orthopaedic surgeon. I have retired now. I have been involved in developing instruments and surgical tools in their design and invention. And stuff like that, which you know has been copied by surgeons all around the world, is actually pretty cool. I've written some landmark papers, including a technique for improving women's incontinence, which is a strange article that I'm actually published in the Journal of Gynecology, and good, long story there, but which we won't go into. But it's nice to be involved across not just orthopaedics. I don't know if you're here because of my famous wife, who is an internationally recognised photographer, internationally awarded. And I can tell you one of the coolest things in my life is over the last 30 years, when in Launceston people say, are you Belinda Fettke's husband? It's so special. We've actually been at a conference together at Low Carb USA, and one of my proudest moments is we got, at an international conference, we got to bookend the conference. Belinda got to open it, a couple of Tasmanians, and I got to second close it with Gary Taubes, who's very, very famous. So a lot of people know me as Belinda Fettke's husband. I'm not even going to mention my children. Are you those person's father? I am really, 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 really concerned about the sickness industry, not just the Tasmanian health system. And I have been on the bandwagon of public health for decades. I got into trouble because I wouldn't operate on smokers 35 years ago. People said, you can't do that. I said, well, watch me. Here's the science, here's the stuff. But rather than actually complain about the problem, I've gone to the root cause and tried to find out the problem and try and look at it and change guidelines with varying success. Some of you may know me from my early days down this path, which is I do want you off sugar. Let's move forward now. If I want you off processed food, it's sugar, carbohydrates, polyunsaturated seed oils, and that's whole lectures in themselves. We've tried working in the community for a long time. We did Fairs' Fat Busters with LAFM and Rob Fairs for 6 or 7 years, which was like Biggest Loser but on radio, and an enormous amount of fun educating our community. We've done public talks here in Launceston. This is at Tail Race with over 600 people. Lectured all around the world, varying sizes of audiences. I was described by a senior person of the LGH as being the moral compass of the LGH. There's an interesting comment in that, and I thought when you think that through, and I have appeared regularly speaking out about the problems in the system, not just at the LGH, but beyond that. That's incurred the wrath of the Tasmanian government regularly, particularly the Department of Health, and some of you may or may not be aware of some very public statements that I've had over time. In the process of that, the medical regulators come after me on at least 3 occasions. Ultimately, I've been cleared of all charges because I'm actually, you don't have to believe it, but I'm actually a good guy with a good heart. And I've actually got good science and we've got good results if we all want to change all that. I now spend a lot of time supporting people who are caught up in the medical regulation system. And that's continued on to this day, and even every week there's not someone that I haven't supported in trying to get the regulator off their back. And it's interesting as time progresses that, it's important for me to have a cheap shot at the system now, but a couple of major players have been thorns in my side, have actually come, maybe the moral compass was actually correct, and their time has come. I've been on the Sunday night, I've been on television. Tony Bennyworth, we managed to get him reverse his diabetes over about an 8-week period, lost about 20 kilos, got him off a whole lot of medications. And he called me the day before he died, and I have that I'm allowed to give that story. And he was so well. Tony died in a drowning accident. He was so well, he'd been out dirt bike riding. He rang me to ask me a favour for a family member, and he was so well and so healthy that he actually got caught out in a rip and his life jacket didn't inflate. So we got him so well that he got into trouble. I've been in controversy on the 730 report. I've been on Four Corners. I've even been in a movie. And you know you've made it big when one of your mates is on a plane to Tokyo and he sends a picture of the back of the screen going, I'm trying to have a decent trap, and your bloody face turns up. So ultimately I was cleared of all these charges. It took several years. Took a lot of personal cost, not just for me but the family. And every year at Christmas time we'd sit down with the kids and say, how are you guys going? Because Fettke's not that common a name. And they'd say, and particularly our son, who's got a wicked sense of humour, I don't know where that comes from, clearly his mother, he just said, I reckon they can hurt you a bit more, Dad. So we continued on. I've actually won. When people say, oh, all that low-carb stuff's nonsense, it's nonsensical, you can go here in Australia down to the grog shop and you can buy multiple types of low-carb beer. I'm not advocating that you go out there and start drinking, but if the community and the market has responded to low carb, therapeutic carbohydrate reduction in the management of diabetes, all of that, then we've won. Fat's back, won that one. Margarine's bad. Eggs and bacon are back. I've been bold enough, arrogant enough, that's what surgeons are, by the way, to write the dietary guidelines for the world. It's gone to the NHMRC, and I said, look, they're spending $10 to $20 million for it. I said, I'll give you this for just $2 million. And they've actually said, no, it's too simple. And I say, argue with it. Just argue with that. And this is our evolutionary diet. Eat fresh, local, seasonal, whole food, according to your cultural belief and environment, avoiding added sugar and processed food. I've nailed it. That's arrogant. But that's in fact the dietary guidelines for the animal kingdom. And we're all just animals. But that doesn't help the processed food industry, nor the pharmaceutical industry, or the sickness industry, because everyone's making money out of you being sick. Some of you may be aware of this paper called The Examiner. Just out of interest, I just searched on the Examiner website and my name comes up 5 or 6 pages worth of references. And I know that's not all of them. So I am outspoken about it, but unless we do speak up, then we're complicit. And, the last one there is, do you know how many doctors spoke up about the pedophile scenario at the LGH? 1. Anyway, it's just so disturbing. PCYC, Tasmania's largest community organisation. I was on the board for several years, started on the capacity because of youth theatre, and I have permission from that child there to have her photograph up there because it's our daughter. We helped get youth theatre off the ground by supporting Pearl Treasure. Youth theatre in Tasmania is massive, and we're very proud to be part of that. You may remember that PCYC was going bust several years ago. There was many years ago. I became chairman of the board at that time, computerised the place, increased the fees by 50% from $2 to $3, and literally within a month turned around the whole place because 50% of the people weren't paying to come in there. So, PCYC is still standing, and we've been part of that. We're not so many people put so much good work into that. I do have a conflict of interest. I am an Australian red meat ambassador. I've spoken at a couple of beef industry meetings. I've tried herding cats, which is the entire meat industry of Australia. They are frigging hopeless. Whereas the processed food industry is highly organised. As Australian red meat ambassador, I have received 1 steak. Right, so I don't get any money. The butcher gives us better steak, better cuts, I think, sometimes. We've embraced social media. It's been my part of one of the curses of it by actually getting into that platform. Going onto social media at the suggestion of my wife and daughter meant that within 24 hours I was targeted by Coca-Cola. Our talks, podcasts, things have now been seen over 10 million times. I've lost track. The important thing about that is we reach more people every single day than I will see in an entire lifetime of medicine. People say, oh, you've retired from clinical practice, and I apologise to those people. I might not be treating on a one-by-one basis, but if I can help tens of thousands of people every day, that's important from our own aspect. Some people may know that Billy Connolly had his Parkinson's diagnosed by me in a hotel foyer whilst I was on a dance. Well, I actually wasn't dancing in California, but our daughter was. But the important fact about the Billy Connolly scenario is that I did not diagnose his prostate cancer in the foyer at the same time, okay? But I did suggest to him, if he starts stumbling and needs a checkup by his GP. And there were a string of expletives saying, blah, 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 don't tell me what's going on. And I said, beep, 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 exactly the same to him. I know what I'm talking about. Beep, beep, beep. I don't know who got the more expletives in, but if you're swearing with Billy Connolly, it is a conversation. So I'm going to take something out of his book, literally the heading. This is his latest book. He's talked about many of his shows and a few books, but this is called Rambling Man. It rambles. So for the rest of this talk, I'm going to ramble, okay? Because I just don't know which path to take, so I'm going to take a little bit of rambling. These are my parents. My father on the left, my mother, two pictures on the right, and I put a picture of her on a motorbike because some of you will know that my public stand about off-road motorbike injuries, to see my mother on one. And I couldn't find a picture of my father on one with his dog hanging off the side, but I know it's somewhere. Tough people, good, fair people. My father was a lad, not educated, left school at 14 or 15, got run out of outback South Australia because of some of his mischief by the time he was about 17, went bush with his brother. My mother was a refugee out of Germany, grew up in Chile and then Bolivia, and then migrated to Australia thinking she was married to someone and finding out that she arrived in Australia speaking German, Spanish, and French, and finding out that the person who she thought she was picking up from the boat didn't turn up, and he was actually having an affair with someone else. So she came to Australia in the 1950s. But pair of larrikins, they decided to get married, had an ugly baby. And the distracting part of that photo on the side is the dog. I was born on the cusp of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Right on the cusp. So is it any wonder that I am a distracted, focused, troublemaking character? And, it's now 62 years since 1962. And I think we're on the cusp of some other crisis at this point in time. It's just interesting. And I'll come back to John F. Kennedy, because it's something that he and I share, because I think it's interesting when you know that about us both. These are my grandparents, my father's parents on the left, holding a beautiful child. My grandparents on the right, my mother's parents, and these are just tough people, if you know their stories. Outback South Australia, running the eucalypt, farming for the oil. My grandmother, baking stuff, had borders in my father's bedroom were wheat sacks with a bit of lime on it. But they knew an honest day's work. My grandfather on the left, on my left, your right, he was quite high up in politics in Nuremberg. He was Lutheran, married a Jewess, and because of politics, they were able to escape after spending a week or two in imprisonment with my mother and her brother in a cupboard, hidden. And so they escaped, and my mother took me to see The Sound of Music at least 30 times, and it still sits as one of my favourite stories. And I used to close up major operations with the listening to The Sound of Music. Some of you may be patients, you may not want to know that. It wasn't a sing-along, but it was always soothing. My grandmother has a street named after her in Nuremberg, and at the end of the war, as a Jewess, she went back to Germany. My mother didn't go back because 19-year-old girls at the end of the war, if you went back there, your only jobs were going to be essentially as a prostitute. So she stayed in South America. But my grandmother, started 8 orphanages in Nuremberg with her husband. And she is the mother of social work for Germany. I didn't know all this until only a few years ago. So it's funny how the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. My uncle, who I was very close to, this is my mother's brother, he became a social worker himself. He wrote prolifically. I have all of his books translated from German into English. Bit of a socialist, but nonetheless, good bloke. My grandmother visited me once, visited us once. What did you see in me, darling? Anyway, and my memory of my mother was that she was very outspoken. She was always at parents and citizens meetings and speaking up very loudly about social issues. She wrote to the newspaper. Crikey, I don't know where all this comes from. But my strongest memory of her growing up was that our home was always full of immigrants learning another language, because she was multilingual and she taught and taught and taught. And I'm mentally scarred from the times that she got me to sing Edelweiss in a pair of lederhosen as a little, and I still don't know the words. I was a fat kid. Not by today's standards, but that, you go back to the 60s, that's a fat kid. Got the swimming pool, the school swimming photo, I was the fat kid in it. I got a bit of bullying, and in fact I got more than my share, but not more than a lot of kids, but nonetheless I was bullied at school. And you wonder, how much of that plays a role. I put the little picture of hockey up there because my coming out was in grade 9 when I was sick of it, and I took a hockey stick to at least a dozen bullies. Our school was pretty tough. Belinda and I went to the Forest High in Sydney, which is the drug capital of the northern suburbs of Sydney if you're looking for anything when you're travelling. But I can still remember the teachers standing to the side and just letting it all get sorted. Never got picked on again. So I do think you stand up when you're being bullied, you stand up, stand your ground, and you'd be surprised how many bullies step down. I'm still a little kid. Why, how, what? I was a little kid going, why, how, what? Just constantly inquisitive. I was a bit of a loner as well because I was bullied. I used to go to the Belrose Public... Well, I didn't go to Belrose. We just lived 200 metres up from... And there was a concrete wall there. And I would spend afternoons, winter, kicking a soccer ball, left foot, right foot. And in the summer, I'd bowl a cricket ball, backwards and forwards, hours and hours on end. But also, the Belrose Public School was the electoral centre for voting. My mother used to encourage me. I can still remember as a 12-year-old going down there with her, and she was in the Liberal Party, and she would get me to quiz all the other candidates, people. I was a little, whatever. Why are you voting for them? Why are you supporting them? What on earth are you on about? And I was questioning. I don't know if I was questioning because I was being painful or because I was questioning whether or not I really wanted to know the answer. I really want to know the answer now, but when I was 12, maybe I was just going, why, how, what? There was no money in our house. I can still remember Dad saying, 12, so you want some pocket money, you've got... He did actually give me some pocket money, I'll come back to that, but essentially you need to go and get a job. So I had 2 paper runs when I was 12. 240 issues of the Manly Daily was delivered 5 mornings a week. I used to get up at 4:30 in the morning and deliver it. I used to be paid $8 a week for that. How much was an LP at that time? $7.99. What was the first LP I was allowed to buy? Elvis GI Blues. My mother said, you can only buy an Elvis album if it has Wooden Heart on it, which was one of her favourite songs. And I'm not kidding, that is a true story. And invariably I would go down to the record store, which was just down the street, and I'd pick up an album and I'd put it back and put the money back in my pocket because I knew how much a dollar was worth. And I've been a bit tough on our kids over the years. They've been born with a silver spoon in comparison with me and with my father. But, that's all you can teach them. So my mother just before she died. She had knee pain. That's my knee x-ray, by the way. She didn't get a knee x-ray. She was told, don't worry about it, it's just a bit of knee pain, by the GP, by the orthopaedic surgeon. 3 months after that, had massive cancer around her knee, which would have shown up on the x-ray. Came home once in the next 4 months, and she died on March 23rd, 1979. I was pretty angry. But I do have to thank a few things. Sport. Opening bowling. I was able to play at a fairly high level for both Manly and into state groups. Marg's eldest son, Brian, was a very good friend of mine, and I don't know if I've ever apologised to him for breaking his heel, but he was batting down the other end and he was in the way. I was angry. I had 7 crashes. I had 9 crashes on my P-plates, but only 7 were mine, my fault. Sport was an outlet for me. Belinda, to this day, has always said that she loves me except when I was on the sporting field. You know, I just get a bit of white line fever. But it saved me. A lot of our school, a lot of people I know turned to drugs. Sport saved me. But I was a teenager. I was constantly hungry, and I needed food. Family wasn't rich. I still remember Dad running out of money every month. Only paying his bills on the 3rd reminder. So therefore I had 3 extra mothers, Rosemary, Margaret and a Greek mother, and she's passed away, and they all fed me. And this was a constant, this image is me. Hi Mum, what's in the fridge? It was a bit of a shock to Rosemary because she had 2 daughters and then a son. I don't think it was much of a shock to Marg because she had already had 3 boys. But yeah, that was me. I was hungry, and I have to respect and love these 3 women because not only did they feed me, they loved me. My father remarried to a Filipino lady. I, over the next couple of years, ended up with an adopted sister, a step-sister and a half-sister. Different parents, different religions, and if you think I'm confused about all of that, then I am. Belinda gave me stability in life. We were married young, 22 and 20. I'm older, okay. Cradle snatching she was. I craved stability. We had to do pre-marriage counselling, and I can still remember the minister saying 2 things. Belinda can remember a lot more things, but I can only remember 2. 3. One is I'm supposed to take... Well, no, that's what you remember. I've got to take the rubbish out all the time. He also said, be careful about how much you joke and tease each other. But we're coming up to our 40-year wedding anniversary in a few weeks' time, so we've gotten away with it so far. And the other one was that when I came home from work, no matter what hour, could there please be food in the house? So food's been a big part of my life for a long time. Rosemary, her mother, Belinda, our elder daughter Kate, Albie, Belinda's father, Rosemary's husband, just gave me so much stability over such a long period of time. Still do. And, you know, you've got to thank family for that because everything was a bit fragmented for me for a long time. Children come along and they give you greater stability, but they also make you tired. And so the only way we could get our daughter to bed was to actually take her for a drive and fall asleep and leave her in the car, and so it was just easier for me to... And so Belinda just snuck up and took the photo. Here's my father a couple of years ago. He's still around. He's over 90 now. Jack of all trades, master of all. I have so much respect for him. Very funny man, sense of humour. The only way I could get money out of him is if I told him a joke. I couldn't work for him. You go out and earn your own money. But if you tell me a good joke, and the filthier it is, the more I'll give you. So every week I used to come home and try and find, and I have a grandson now, but we have the same thing, but I don't tell him the dirty jokes, and I don't want the dirty jokes, but there's got to be a joke from every week. Funny man. My father, I could open up his wallet today and I will find quotes in it. There's always quotes in there. He's got little bits of paper cut up and they're in his wallet. And this is his favourite quote. Genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Thomas Edison. He's got his Thomas Edison's books. He's got Beethoven's biography, Edison's biography. He loves quotes. So you're going to get a few more today. He, as I say, was uneducated. When he met my mother, she worked hard to educate him. And every night he would read the dictionary. He would learn a word, and he's always said to me, never go to sleep unless you've learnt something new every single day. And one of my great aims in life was to get the complete Oxford English Dictionary. I don't know if any of you have read The Surgeon of Crowthorne, the story of the Oxford English Dictionary. Great read. Better than the movie, but nonetheless it's there. And so I aspired that I wanted to actually get enough money one day to buy the complete Oxford English Dictionary. But it's on here now. And I have it. I learnt, from the Oxford Dictionary that you can say pissed off. And it's slang in Australia, but it's a vulgarism in the UK. I wrote a letter to the editors of both the Examiner and the Mercury at one point in time saying that I'm pissed off about something. In brackets, Australian Oxford Dictionary slang. The Mercury published it as that I'm pissed off about the topic, and the Examiner changed it to angry. I'm increasingly angry. So I wrote a letter to the editor of saying I'm pissed off that you changed the word pissed off to angry. Australian Oxford Dictionary. Anyway, I caught up with him at a function at some point in time. He said, look, you were right, but I felt that I couldn't do it. I said, but I was right, wasn't I? So, I've also won a court case over the definition of the word in. Language is very powerful. If you've got a circle and there's a line there, is the line in or out of the circle? You can ponder it. Language is very careful. That's why I'm on Twitter. I was encouraged as a child to... This is a gramophone, Edison gramophone that my father redid it. As a kid, he was a ham operator, the tube radios, everything like that. Lawnmowers, he had the workshop. And I'd be in there with him, and he'd say, pull it apart and put it back together. Bike, motor, car, anything. And guess what? I ended up with a career of pulling it apart and putting it back together. And I do think all of those years of just sitting around with him in his space, listening to his quotes, telling filthy jokes, taught me to not be afraid to pull things apart and put them back together. Back yourself. So I've been involved in building a few things over. It also gave me the ability to get this award. My registrar some years ago gave me a golden toilet brush. I'm very proud of that. It's probably the most important trophy I've ever been given. Because at the LGH, over many decades, when someone didn't know what to do with something, they'd end up in my clinic on a Friday. I got to clean up all the shit, excuse the language. And my clinics were called Fettke's effed up fructose-free fungating foot folly Fridays. I never found out what the effed up meant. But I'm proud of that because I changed my letterhead at some point in time just for mucking around with my colleagues. And I said, I didn't want to be a knee surgeon or a sports surgeon or a hip surgeon. I changed it to specialising in everything that no one else wants to do. What a fascinating surgical career. Sydney Olympics, remember year 2000? All right, I'm really sorry for the next photo, but this is my memory of the year 2000. Okay, I was diagnosed with a big tumour at the base of my brain, underwent neurosurgery, radiotherapy, and joy upon joy, I've had a couple more episodes of surgery, and that's me in 2024, about 5 or 6 months ago, having more radiotherapy to it. I'm still here, the bastard can't get me. But it does give you a different perspective if you wake up in intensive care and you actually, if you're 38 and you're in intensive care for 5 days, you're not there because you're well. You're there because you're nearly dead. And so I've been there a couple of times now, and I've got a beautiful wife who's stood beside me, and that's one of the most important rules in life, is just make certain you've got someone who loves you, because I don't think I could do it without. One of the side effects of all that was that I've lost the dampening ability. So I can hear the fluorescent lights going. I can look at a tree and see every light, every leaf. I can see all of you at once without dampening it down. I have often got 3 computers open with 3 different search engines on them, with 100 tabs open in each one, and I will see the patterns in there. And that's why I've been on this nutritional journey, to see things before others. Cassandra's curse. I also have Addison's as a result of that. Addison's disease is where I lose the ability to produce cortisol. So I need to take some every day, otherwise I die. Been like that for 25 years. The wonderful thing about that is that, I think it was in my second Senate inquiry, Belinda found me giggling, and she said, "Why aren't you smashed?" And she found me giggling in the car. He's lost the plot again. And I said, I've got an X-Man superpower. I've got Addison's. On one curse, one moment it can kill you. On the other side is I don't get stressed. I don't produce cortisol. I'll get stressed here, but I have no physical response to that. And when we found that out, we were able to double down. And yeah, I don't have a flight panic. I don't panic about anything. So that's really good if they're involved, if I'm operating in the middle of the night, it's a multi-trauma, everyone's flustered, and I'm just going, yeah, let's talk about the footy. It's just cool. It also allows me to do this to the system and not really worry about the consequences. John F. Kennedy had Addison's. Yeah, he's pretty cool under pressure. I'm also cursed with the ability to poke my head into spots where I'm not supposed to. And I do have to bear the consequences of maybe being... Isn't travel wonderful? The trouble is, once you actually open up all these computer tabs and you see patterns, and I use this quote, not just all of it, once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Once you can reverse someone's type 2 diabetes in 48 hours, you can't unsee it. Once you see the effects of everything in society, you can't unsee it. The trouble is that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And once you've seen it, keeping quiet, saying nothing, becomes as political an act as speaking out. There's no innocence. Whichever way you look at it, once you've seen it, you're accountable. Very profound. Black swans. You heard of black swan events? All you need is one black swan to disprove everything. Science evolves by being challenged. If you find a black swan, it changes everything. All swans in the world were white. The Roman times, they used to say it's as rare as a black swan, until the Dutch in 1668 found a black swan in my birthplace called Western Australia. So I was born in the black swan place of the world. I was destined to it. The other thing I'm destined to is Fettke in German is fat key, the key to fat, key to obesity. I only just worked that one out, so I'm a bit slow. So when you start, and I've seen many black swans, particularly in medicine, and when you see a black swan, you can't ignore it. And if you ignore it, you're a fool. Ronald Reagan used to write something every day, write a letter to himself every single day. This is my favourite quote of his. I'm not smart enough to lie. I live by that. If you can't remember every lie you've told. And if I've said something to you, and people come up to me now and said, 25 years ago you said this about me, and I said, probably did. So if there's any old patients of mine here and I've offended you at some point in time, I might have offended you on the day, but was I right? I played golf with someone a couple of months ago, and he's clearly overweight. And they said, I saw you 20 years ago and you told me I was carrying a slab of beer under each arm, and I needed to get rid of the slab of beer under each arm. I said, yeah, probably did. And we were coming up to the 18th hole at Launceston, and it was all even. And $2.50 is a big bet, okay? So he's about to hit up to his ball, and I said, didn't pay any attention to me, did you? And he duffed his shot, and I went, yes. Here's a life lesson I learnt. I had 14 jobs through university. I had 11 jobs through university. We moved 14 times in our first 10 years of marriage. But I had 11 jobs, and there was and it was a petrol station which has now been demolished, but otherwise I'd have a photo of it. And I had to pump the petrol, and people would come in, check the tyres, do this and whatever. And there was one fellow who taught me so much in life. I've got no idea what his name is. But he used to come in last couple of years, a whole lot of people knew I was in my last couple of years of medicine. I had my greasy hands, and he'd come in and say, do the tyres, boy. Check the oil, boy. I used to be called boy. Fill it up, boy. And I went, okay, fine, did my job. A year later, I was an intern at Royal North Shore, and I had a white coat on. And he came in with his daughter. He called me sir. I can guarantee you, if any of you know me, I don't change. It doesn't matter the situation, I do not change. And I hadn't changed. And I thank him, because I had changed my costume, but I hadn't changed. So much in that one episode. We've travelled, we've been fortunate enough to travel. Does anybody know where that is? It's in Greece. It's the centre of the universe. It's Delphi. Origin, it's a place where the ancient Olympic Games started. If you've been a patient of mine, sometimes I talked about Delphi. So Delphi, 2 eagles flew off from the rock, went around the universe, and they both came back at the same time, so therefore that is the centre of the universe. And people would travel for 5 days by road to ask the oracle of Delphi for hundreds of years. So the oracle, she changed the time when the mystery continued. People would travel for 5 days to ask a question of the oracle. The priests would ask the question to the oracle would chant something back, the priests would give the question back to them in a different form. And then they'd travel away for 5 days. If you've spent 10 days thinking about the problem, you already know the answer. You don't need someone to tell you about it. And so I actually think a lot of my patients came to me, and I'd tell them about Delphi, and I'd say, you know the answer. You need to lose weight. You need to get fit. You need to get an attitude. You need to change your attitude to your problem, which meant I lost a lot of patients. But I felt that I was honest. So Delphi holds a spot dear to my heart. I didn't know about Delphi until we put our hands on the rock. But I'm pretty certain that the centre of my universe was there, standing beside me as my rock. And I might sound corny, but, it's tough. Leonardo da Vinci, I love Leonardo da Vinci. I'd like to be his best mate, but he's not here. I think I've read his books, I've looked at his inventions, I've looked at his artwork. we went to the Sistine Chapel and Belinda said, "Did you see the hand of God?" And I went, "Oh, I forgot." We had to run all the way back around it to look at it. It had long since come to my attention that people of accomplishment rarely sat back and let things happen to them. They went out and happened to things. A great quote. And I've written quotes myself, but sometimes you just got to steal others because it's too good. Our daughter, our older daughter again, she wanted to do personality testing on our team at Nutrition for Life when we had that, to get us all to working better. And she said, "I want to do personality testing." I said, I can't be compartmentalised, darling. I am unique. I'm a unicorn." She said, "No, I'm going to do it." Damn it, I found out that I'm an ENTJ, right? Commander-in-Chief. I'm not here to say please, I'm here to tell you what to do. See the big picture, don't worry a bit of collateral damage. Fictional characters include Batman, yes. Also includes Voldemort, to put it in another perspective, and Peppa Pig for those people who have gone. Belinda talked about Batman at some point in time, right in the midst of me being hammered by the system. And she called me her superhero, and she quoted Jasper Jones, the book, written in I wrote it down. Need my glasses, I am old. In 2009. And the great thing about Jasper Jones' preferred Batman to Superman was that he doesn't need superpowers. He can hold his own. He has an alter ego. He has a costume, wearing his jacket. He fights for truth and justice. He has arch enemies. And he does all this without any weird mutations. Well, I do have a couple. He's just really determined. That's what makes him interesting. So, with enough dedication and desire, we can all be Batman, Batmen, Batwoman, Batpeople. And that's what makes him the best. Quote from the book. And I don't have to be anyone's superhero or whatever, but I am determined. And once you actually find out your personality, no matter how old you are, it gives you an insight into who you are, why you do things, and how you react with the people around you. So I am ENTJ. In the interests of time, we'll skip golf, which I think is fascinating to see how people act when they have no control, how they act when they have got no one else to blame for the outcome of their actions. Who knows what doctor means in Latin? To teach. Doesn't mean to care for, doesn't mean to make money, doesn't mean to operate, doesn't mean to medicate, it means to teach. So I'd like to think that I have been a teacher. I have enjoyed teaching, whether or not it's via social media, whether or not it's here today, and I don't know if I'm teaching you much at all. Fairs is Fat Busters, what a lot of fun. I've had the ability to travel and teach in the South Pacific, doing foreign aid work, just so much fun. The very first time I did it, I thought I came back confused. I didn't know if I'd actually help many people or I did it for myself, my own ego. I was really challenged by it. I went back the following year and I asked someone, how are you going to treat the fracture? Which is one of my mantras. Reverse the forces that occurred at the time of injury in direction and magnitude. Oops, now you can all be orthopaedic surgeons. Eh? And this Nevan gentleman, he was in his, would have been about 30. He just grinned at me with the whitest teeth and the darkest skin, and he said, I think we need to reverse the forces that occurred at the time of injury and direction and magnitude. I went, yes! And I went back for the next 6 years, because you can teach them capacity. Wow. Just an honour, just an honour. I've also lectured in South Africa. I don't know if any of you have been to the poorer communities, the townships in Cape Town. Completely overrun by corporate interests like Coca-Cola. We have the ability to be educated without too much corporate influence if you look carefully here in Australia. Here's a lecture that I did we did at, again, tail race. Ollie, as a teenager, type 1 diabetes, got up there explaining how he got total control of his life. He'd gone from a loser, problematic student by doing low carb and becoming smart and educated and thinking he was smart and educated rather than being stupid. Look at that look on his face, standing up in front of 600 people, totally empowered, that as a 16-year-old he'd taken control of his life again. And look at the proud non-father to his side. Wow. That's what we're on about. So, you know, that kid that used to go, why, how, has moved into the person now goes, why, how, what the fuck. Social media, what's happening in the world, Twitter, X, whatever you call it. When you reach out and find out the problems in the world, you go, hang on, WTF, and try and make a difference. That's what we're trying to do. So I do think we can do it. That's it. Just get rid of that T. I do believe in inversions, even converted my uncle into doing an inversion, looking at the world from a different perspective, looking at it from upside down. It's okay to take some risks in life. You find support in the strangest places. I've got no idea why someone wrote bacon and eggs as graffiti. It wasn't me. You do need friends, right? And it's our daughter, we're travelling, but nonetheless, friends are so important to us. Write something down before you die, even if it's just a letter to your children, a card with heartfelt emotions and something true about yourself on it. But it is tiring. And when you do get into trouble, remember to phone a friend. And, you know, someone said that I can't not be lovey-dovey, but don't spend your life with don't focus on wash your balls here, okay? Don't spend your life with someone you can live with, spend it with someone you can't live without. Here is one of my quotes. Only dead fish swim with the current. You know you're truly alive when you're swimming against it. I said it's a story unfinished. My jigsaw puzzle is not yet complete. But for the purposes of today, we have finished. Thank you. None of you fell asleep. Or maybe you're very skilled at it. Okay?
Unlike the rest of you, I brought a notebook today because I have to say thank you on your behalf, and that means I'll remember more than 2 or 3 of the things that Dr. Fettke shared with us today. It has been a very illuminating and very, very interesting eulogy. Now, it's very interesting to give your own eulogy when you're hopefully only halfway through your life. So it will be very interesting to see what additions are made to this eulogy, and hopefully we might get to hear them in another 60, it's a bit of an ask, but maybe another 20 years. It's been a real pleasure, Dr. Fettke. Thank you very much on behalf of us all for your talk. What a clever man he was in choosing the family he was born into and the family he has created himself. I too was born in a family where the issue was, is there week left at the end of the money or money left at the end of the week? And it was usually the former. And it does make you appreciate in a way that people who always have riches don't appreciate. So that really resonated with me amongst all the many things that I have scribbled in my notebook. So thank you very much, Dr. Fettke. And this is a membership of the Friends as a small thank you for your presentation. Thank you very much indeed. Please join us.